to the Happy Wife School show. So happy to be back. I missed you guys last week. So if you guys don't mind telling me in the chat that you can hear me, see me, everything is working well, that would be great. So before we get started on today's topic, where did God go in marriage? Just a couple of reminders. If you guys like to listen to my Saturday show on podcast format, which takes out kind of my beginning of chatting with you guys a little bit, reminders, sharing a little bit in the end part of the questions. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, where else? Google Podcasts, I think. And then also I'm releasing the podcast format right here in YouTube as well. So just know that that's there. If you're following me on Spotify, if you could rate the podcast, that would be great. Same if you're following on Apple, I would appreciate it so much. The new show, Talking Points. I have the first episode recorded. I've been sitting on it actually for a couple weeks. So I'm going to be releasing Talking Points, the full episodes of Talking Points on Rumble and X. So Talking Points is the call-in show. That's what we've decided to name it. So I will be answering questions that people submit for me to read and answer, and also talking with live callers on the call-in show. And I've got my two first callers this Thursday, which I'll be recording and then releasing that. So please be sure to check that out on Rumble and X. I will be posting some clips of it here on YouTube, but the full episodes will be available there. I want to give you guys a quick reminder about Josie's channel, Escape the Alternative Health Matrix. Josie is incredible. She is also a teacher, and Josie's journey and path was overcoming. She had 8 autoimmune disorders and chronic illnesses, and she resolved those within herself when she tried everything from doctors to alternative medicine practitioners, and she finally found it was her that she had to work on in her emotional state to resolve those autoimmune diseases and illnesses. And now she teaches others how to do the same. So if you are struggling or know someone that is struggling with autoimmune and chronic illness, please go check her channel out. You can find the link below in the description. I think I've got the description there already today. And I'm just going to pop over, make sure you guys can hear me. I'm not just talking into dead air. Excellent sound. Thanks, Steve. And thank you so much to Phil, Steve, and Evo for being here, keeping the chat a great place to be. You guys do a phenomenal job, and people tell me that when I speak to people for consultations, or if they reach out for a session and we're meeting, they tell me how wonderful you guys do on Saturday and what a great place it is to be. So thank you guys so much, and thank you to all of those joining. It's good to be here. So let's get into what we are talking about today, which is where did God go in marriage? And this is something that is very important to me and my path and my journey, and something I want to express through my own understanding and my experience as a woman and with my husband, and God guiding me through my life and marriage. So this is coming from my experience and personal lived experience. It's not biblical. My path as a Christian and my relationship with God has not been one that's been through the Bible, but it's been one that comes through the heart and embracing the challenges of life to learn and grow through the Word of God. And that's vulnerable for me to express, and something that took a while for me to accept and know in myself. I judged myself. I felt shamed. I felt I couldn't be a Christian. And people had asked me like over the last 6 months or a year, and I was so conflicted in myself because my path and how it looks, and that it doesn't look like one of the church or one of the Bible, but more who I am and how I live my life and that personal relationship with God. And my calling, why I do this channel, why I teach, why I do what I do, is to fulfill God's purpose for me. And God's purpose for me, and what I have found and what He has led me through, is teaching and being a thought leader to bring these ideas of the dynamics between women and good men and marriage into the world. And so I very much feel and know that he speaks through me, he works through me, but only if I have my heart open to me and open to him. So today, in talking about where did God go in marriage, I want to talk about this because of how many influencers are out there, and even men, through my comments, that believe men shouldn't get married, that marriage is dying, that marriage is pointless because they are hurt and angry and jaded by women and jaded by the system. And I want to speak about what I believe very passionately, that marriage is created by God and deeply meaningful and purposeful and as relevant today and as needed today as it ever has been. For me, what I teach is marriage is not the problem. Women are not the problem. Men are not the problem. It is the people in marriage and not knowing the purpose of marriage. So the problem is not marriage, it's the people in it. And not knowing the purpose of marriage. That's what we're looking at today. And from my experience and what I teach, marriage was perfectly created to accomplish God's intended purpose for it. But we need to understand it both as women and as good men and embrace it. The challenge is in the title of the video, that where did God go in marriage? God didn't go anywhere. God didn't go anywhere in marriage. God gave us free will. So it is up to us to use marriage how God intended for marriage to be used. And in doing my research to see more the biblical understanding of God's purpose for marriage, I came across three main purposes. The first purpose and how God intended marriage to be is companionship. The second, procreation. And the third, which is most interesting to me, that I most relate to, that is most relevant to my path, is redemption. That God created marriage for redemption. And is in that it's not marriage that's the problem, women or men. It's not understanding that the purpose of marriage is not to work on the marriage, but to work on ourselves and the limitations and shortcomings within ourselves that create the problems and issues in marriage. So in spending some time looking at myself, what's my experience and journey? Because it is a journey. It's not, okay, I've been redeemed. It is a journey. So I spent some time thinking about, what does redemption mean to me? And redemption is the journey of becoming my true self in the image of God by overcoming my humanness. Redemption is the journey of becoming my true self in the image of God by overcoming my humanness. And for me and many others, there's no context greater than marriage that allows my limitations and shortcomings and humanness to come out, for me to overcome and become who I was made to be, who I'm meant to be in the image of God. In order to use marriage as God intended and created for redemption, there are 3 steps that we need to take. The first step is that we must be red-pilled. So what does that mean to me in this channel, being the red pill for women? And it's red-pilling good men too. The red pill is to see the truth of our humanness. So for women, the red pill is to see the truth of how we show up in marriage as selfish, emasculating, and unwilling to be accountable. We must be willing to embrace the truth in our woman ways of how we show up. For a good man, being red-pilled to see the truth of your humanness is for you to see how you've unknowingly given away your power to your wife, to embrace your wife in her emasculating ways, her lack of accountability, her selfishness, to see how she uses those to exploit the weaknesses in you that allow you to be emasculated. The second step in using marriage as God intended for redemption is to move from camp victim to camp take responsibility. Because in camp victim, we've given our power away, we blame, we feel our experience is happening to us, and in that we feel no control to be able to change it, and we feel stuck. And camp victim, from that place of blame, we cannot use God's intention and meaning for marriage and fulfill its purpose. We have to move into camp take responsibility so that we can be responsible for our choice to be married and embrace the challenges, embrace the ups and downs in order to fulfill God's purpose for it, which leads to step 3, is to embrace God's purpose for marriage, to work to overcome the shortcomings and the limitations that keep us from being who God meant for us to be. And marriage is the perfect context because it exposes the parts in us as both women and good men that need to be redeemed. And we can't see our role and our behaviors that create that experience if, 1, we're not willing to see the truth of our humanness, 2, we're not willing to go from camp victim to camp take responsibility, and 3, embrace God's purpose for marriage. In this case, and what we're talking about today, is redemption. So those are the 3 steps to be able to embrace God's purpose for redemption. And again, I have to have a context. I have to have the context that shows me my shortcomings and my limitations and my humanness that limit me from the full potential of who I am. And that's true for both women and for men. And that might be called in different ways. It could be called our false self. It could be called the center or the and within us. It could be the ego. It's the parts of us that need to be redeemed. And to me, those parts are there because that is not only the purpose of marriage, but the purpose of life and growing and learning through life and being able to embrace those challenges and adversities and from my experience, tests from God to overcome those limitations and the worst parts of us come out in marriage, especially for us as women. The parts of us that we hide and suppress, that we put a facade over in other relationships that we wouldn't want anyone to know because we would fear they wouldn't like us, they wouldn't accept us. Those parts come out in marriage against our husbands as good men. It might be, why? Why is it marriage that, especially for us as women, those emasculating, selfish, psychologically manipulative behaviors come out? Is because we feel trapped in marriage because of camp victim. We very much, and this was my experience as I've been on this journey, very much feel like marriage is a prison that we are trapped in, that's taken away our rights, has taken away our choices, our freedoms. And because we're trapped in this prison, we do everything to fight against the person that we believe is causing us to be in that prison, which for us as women is marriage itself, and obviously, most obviously, our husbands, and blaming them for our experience. So then that's why the ugliest sides and parts of us as women come out, and why we need marriage to overcome those limitations. And it exposes, as I said before, the weaknesses in men and good men that allow them to unknowingly give their power away to their wives and allow their wives to emasculate them. So I want to go into 3 insights into God's purpose of redemption for marriage. The first insight is, what does redemption in marriage mean for women? Because this has been my path, and it was difficult, very challenging, can still be difficult and challenging at times, to use my marriage as that context and a mirror into myself and the ugliest parts of who I can be, that I can embrace that God made me perfectly that way to be able to overcome those limitations in me as a woman. When I embrace that and know this is perfectly designed, I'm perfectly designed, then I could begin to open up and be curious and accept myself as a woman and the ugly parts of me that mask the most beautiful and wonderful parts of who I am as a woman. And that's why I'm passionate to speak to other women. It's not to make you bad or wrong. That's why I share myself and share my journey, and that I'm not perfect and I'm human and I make mistakes, so that you can take that journey to see these things in yourself. So redemption for a woman in marriage is a willingness to see that we are emasculating, selfish, and psychologically manipulative to gain power and control over our husbands. Redemption, I'm going to repeat that. Redemption for a woman in marriage is a willingness to see that we are emasculating and selfish and psychologically manipulative to gain power and control over our husbands, for the purpose to see those things. Our willingness to see that about ourselves, again, is not to make ourselves bad or wrong. It's to overcome these behaviors and limitations that are inherent in us as women in the context of marriage or a relationship with a good man. Brings this out in us that no other relationship can. But we must be willing to be red pilled. We must be willing to see the truth of how we show up with a good man in a marriage. And we have to want to go to camp, take responsibility and see these parts and take responsibility for them so that we are empowered to change, and our husbands who are good men get the benefit. Reminder, I didn't say this in the beginning. My channel is for women married to good men and good men married to women, not any other type of relationship or a committed relationship between a woman and a good man, or a woman and a good man wanting to learn so that they can be in a committed relationship and know how it works. So we have to be willing to want to take responsibility, to see ourselves as the problem and our behaviors and shortcomings that weaken our husbands, that make us feel really bad about ourselves and destroy a marriage. We have to be willing to see the ugly underbelly of who we are and how we treat the person that we're supposed to love the most and be committed to. Because not only are we treating our husbands so poorly, and our emasculating behaviors, our selfishness, and our psychological manipulation of them, you must understand that comes out because it's how we treat ourselves. And we don't want to see that. And so we put it out onto our husbands. So women, you want to watch my videos in order to fulfill God's purpose of marriage for redemption. You want to watch my videos to know yourself in them so you can change. A very profound understanding that was taught to me is that I cannot heal that which I deny. So the purpose of my videos isn't to watch them. That's not me, or I don't do that. It's to be curious and open-minded of, how do I do these behaviors? How am I these things Karen talks about? So that you can change. Because if you push them away and deny them, you cannot change. And your marriage will continue to suffer. Your husband will continue to suffer. You will continue to suffer. So it's eating a piece of humble pie. And remembering that God gave you free will, which means it is a choice you have to make. You have to make the choice to see the woman ways I talk about and teach in yourself so that you can redeem yourself and fulfill God's purpose for marriage. Again, as long as we deny the behaviors, we can't fulfill his purpose for marriage. We can't be happy, and we cannot have a healthy marriage. It's through the acceptance of our woman ways that we can redeem ourselves. It's why God created us to be the way that we are and have been forever. And why God created marriage, so we can overcome this within ourselves. The second insight I want to share into God's purpose of redemption for marriage is, what does redemption in marriage mean for good men? What does redemption in marriage mean for good men? Very simply, your wife is your greatest teacher. Your wife and her emasculating, selfish, psychologically manipulative behaviors, her unwillingness to take accountability, is exposing your weaknesses and limitations that keep you from knowing yourself in God's image. The reason that you feel weak and powerless to navigate these behaviors in your wife is because she is able to exploit you and your weaknesses to her. Good men are not wired like women. Good men do not have it in their nature to be emasculating, which is essentially shaming and making someone bad and wrong on purpose to weaken them. Good men are not selfish, and they have no idea how to be psychologically manipulative from a cruel place of wanting control over another. That is the very opposite of a good man's nature, which means he's unable, without the red pill and seeing the truth of what's happening, he's unable to see his wife's manipulation of him and continues to give his power away to her. So a good man's journey is to be red-pilled, to see your limitations and your behaviors that allow your wife to treat you the way that she does. And in order for a good man to see the truth of what's happening and see his weaknesses and limitations in the dynamics of a marriage with a woman, is that you must also move from camp victim to camp take responsibility. You have to choose the path that God intended in marriage. And for you to use your wife as your greatest teacher. The men that I mentioned earlier that are angry, understandably angry, hurt, and jaded, that are running away from marriage, and women are stuck in camp victim. So it's understandable that a good man or men would feel like a victim, because you feel powerless and resigned to do anything about how your wife or a woman treats you. So by moving into camp take responsibility, that your wife in marriage has created the perfect environment to see the weaknesses and limitations that are in you, so that you can overcome and become the best version of yourself in God's image. But you must realize your wife is your greatest teacher and a gift, and that the purpose of marriage is to work on ourselves, not the marriage. The purpose of marriage is to work on ourselves, not the marriage. So for both women and good men, what is my marriage exposing in me that's limiting my experience of myself, limiting the experience of my spouse, and limiting the experience of marriage? God created us these ways and created marriage to give us the context to overcome these shortcomings and limitations. That is the redemption. The third insight I would like to share about God's purpose of redemption in marriage is the dance of marriage. That as we are redeeming ourselves to overcome our behaviors and our limitations, to become who we are as women and men in God's image, that is where we find the dance of marriage. That as the best expression of how God made us, we grow into our nature as men and women and grow into our natural roles in marriage. And this creates the dance. And that's what my husband and I have, that I was just reflecting on, actually. I mean, partly because doing this video today, and just the experience I was having with my husband last night, seeing that dance and seeing how special what we have is, that we've been able to build and create by redeeming ourselves and overcoming each of our limitations and using the marriage as that context to do so. That dance is so beautiful. And the dance is a natural flow in order that allows the full expression of each person in the marriage and allows the expression of grace. And we cannot experience that dance without as women doing our part and role in fulfilling God's purpose to overcome our behaviors and limitations. And for men to overcome your limitations and behaviors so that we can both come together in our natural roles and have the dance. So in that, and understanding the purpose of redemption and marriage that God created it to be, what a beautiful creation that God has made for all of us. And that's what I wanted to talk about. I knew this was going to be very vulnerable. And it's very personal to me in my journey. And I haven't done I've sprinkled in a little bit about my journey with God, but I haven't gone fully here before. So I appreciate you all so much giving me the opportunity, the audience, the platform to be able to share this, because I think it is something our society is in dire need of. And as I said in the beginning, marriage has never been more relevant or needed in our culture for both men and for women. So with that being said, again, thank you so much for joining me today and being here and being part of this. It means so much to me. And if you would, please, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, consider sharing with someone you know might need to hear this message today, or any of my videos and the message that I am here to teach. So I'm going to go over to the chat for a moment. And I know Evo is going to send me some questions. Oh, thanks, Love Grows. Always so nice to have you. We as women have forsaken our God-given roles in marriage, and boy, does it show. We love you, Karen. Thank you so much. I love you guys too. Thank you. And then let me come up here for a moment. Gosh, I hope I don't have to blow my nose live. We have a joke here in the office. I'm going to share this with you guys. I'll probably regret it later. But we have a joke that my dad, he taught me, like, when I was young, like, when you blow your nose, you get it all. So everyone laughs in the office when I have to blow my nose, and it's like, oh, Karen's getting in there. So hopefully I'm not going to do that live with you guys. Phil, thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for your truth, perspective, and vulnerability, Karen. You're welcome. I think I can love that there. Thank you so much, Phil. It's an honor, an absolute honor. Let me come over to... and thank you, Chelsea. I see you out there. Chelsea's my amazing, wonderful assistant who I can't imagine not having Chelsea with me. Amen, Karen. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are needed and you are loved. Thanks, Chelsea. Chelsea is awesome. She's doing so many cool things to help me continue to grow and get this message out. So she deserves a round of applause. All right, I'm going to head over here to my email and see what Evo has sent to me. Sorry, guys, I'm sniffly. That's what I'm going to have to do to not have to blow my nose. Let's see. It was a shorter one today looking at the time, but hopefully impactful. All right. Thank you, Evo. You rock. You rock. Siege, thank you so much for your generosity. Hear from Glenn Lawrence's channel. He spoke highly about you and your content, liked and subscribed. So happy to have you, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for your generosity. Question. Karen, I am one of 8 men in my company alone whose wives have left them, cheated on them, or divorced them. Where is a man meant to go with this? You're not alone. And to know that's a risk we take in marriage, and it is common. And so that is as well embracing God's intention for us to grow and learn from these adversities in life. Marriage does not always work out, and that is a truth. So it's continuing to take what God is teaching you and showing you to overcome and heal and become stronger and more than you could ever imagine by moving through the adversities of divorce or an affair or being hurt so badly. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, doesn't mean that it was right or okay, but we have a choice to either be in camp victim or move to camp take responsibility and grow and learn from marriage even when it doesn't work. So I highly recommend you watch my live episodes on when a man should divorce and forgiveness. There's a live show on forgiveness, and there's a lot. I'll talk with Chelsea on Monday, and we'll get some links posted to support men of what you want to do with all of this. If you are divorced or your wife has cheated, I apologize, guys. Thank you, Brianna. I am so thankful to God for you and your channel. Bless you. So happy you are here. Thanks, Chelsea. I'm a female graduate of Karen's program, so we exist. Oh, great. That's beautiful, Andrew. You know, this video makes the idea of marriage easier. I could not agree more. Yeah. Oh, and thank you. This is all a continual repeat of Genesis 3, that Adam's weakness toward his wife, Eve's lack of accountability, and marriage is how men and women work through their part in original sin. Beautiful. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to wrap up so I can go blow my nose. It's so wonderful to have you all here. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and keep an eye out for the first episode of Talking Points to be released this coming week on Rumble and X. And I will see you guys next week, and looking forward